Hello, I'm Rob Doherty and this is the FSTVS podcast, Executive Edition, supported by Liberi Consulting and hosted by Julian Scott, animation consultant for Film London. In this series we'll be chatting to the big hitters in the animation industry and discovering a little bit more about what they do, how they got there, their thoughts on the animation industry, and, I hope, get to meet the person behind that executive title. Bienvenue, willkommen, and welcome to the latest FSTVS podcast. I hope life is treating you well at the moment, and if it's not, that this podcast series helps alleviate some of the stress, for 45 minutes or so at least. Today's episode is particularly positive and uplifting as it features a lovely chat with the amazing Allison Abbate. Allison's CV reads like a veritable who's who, or what's what, of animated feature films over the past few decades. The Little Mermaid, The Rescuers Down Under, The Iron Giant, Corpse Bride, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Tom and Jerry, the list goes on. But the thing I found most inspiring was Allison's insights into how to get ahead in the industry, the positivity and adaptability it takes to really find your path. Qualities that, coupled with tenacity and a constant curiosity, have taken Allison to the very heights of our profession. I'd advise taking notes throughout this episode. Have fun and see you on the other side of the chat.
Allison, your list of credits on animated features is extensive and they trip off the tongue. Nightmare Before Christmas, The Rescuers, The Iron Giant, Corpse Bride, Frankenweenie, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Tom and Jerry. You could basically sit back and I could listen for 45 minutes and then you could go home. But please don't. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you today and take this walk down my memory lane and just chat about the state of affairs in our wonderful business. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
A voyage of discovery. So I hope that's a good voyage of discovery.
It is.
You've had a long association with Tim Burton. You've worked for major studios like Disney and Warner's. You got a BAFTA, nominated for a PGA award. How did all this start? Did you study animation and filmmaking, get hired straight out of college?
Not even a little bit. No, I knew I wanted to be a movie maker. I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. I always grew up loving the movies, and I moved to California right out of college. I knew no one. I just decided to sort of get started, or just sort of see if I could make it work. And then I became a temp. Like, they had a temp agencies where you could go one day here, one day there. And I figured, okay, that's a great idea to get a sense of what the different companies did. And I temped at Disney, and it was right at the end of Little Mermaid. And I got swept up into into sort of the renaissance of animation that was, right from Little Mermaid on.
So you were a temp at Disney.
Yes, I answered the phones for one day. And so it was, again, it was just an interesting time, because it was really like, Oliver and Company was kind of a popular movie. Little Mermaid hadn't come out yet, but, they knew it was going to be something special. And so it was just a very magical time for that they were. But again, I was in a old trailer in an industrial park, far away from the studio lot. Animation was not like the revered fancy pants thing that it is that we've come to know. At that point, animation was really kind of relegated to being kind of the sort of the just like a secondary thing for them. It wasn't that popular. So I was in a leaky trailer. They handed me a little book when I was sitting there answering the phones, and they said, can you make a little box? And I took some old cardboard. I fashioned a box, and then it was raining and things were getting wet. And so I found a piece of plastic and I threw it over the top of the trailer, and they said, you're hired. Could you please stay? Because I had shown some like enthusiasm, and I just took things into my own hands. But it was like, you needed to, because everybody was getting wet. It was just like people were running around without the right resources. And so again, like, it was fun because it felt like, oh, they need me here. Yeah, I'm going to help them out, not knowing that animation was something that I would fall in love with. It just felt like I was going to where I was needed. And then that was the end of Little Mermaid, but the project was Rescuers Down Under. And the thing about Rescuers Down Under is that it was the first digitally painted film. So technology was really at the forefront of that movie in a weird time when people weren't really thinking about it. And then when Little Mermaid did so well, they really thought that, well, we have to do this. So the people who were there on the ground floor really got like a first row seat of how to make a movie, how to reinvent how to make a movie. Like we were just a bunch of young people trying to figure it out. And so it was an exciting time. I was lucky.
I bet. And you said just then that, you always wanted to be a filmmaker. Was there, movies, TV shows, animated or not, from your youth that influenced you in that respect and made you think that's where I want to go with my life?
Absolutely. My mom was an actress and a writer and a director in New York in like theater. And but she loved movies. She really we would get woken up at at midnight if there was like a midnight show of Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast or Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers movie. Like she loved movies. So movies always felt special and felt exciting. It felt exciting, and Hollywood felt exciting. And I remember when I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I just was in the audience, and I thought, I want to make people feel the way I feel. I'm going to get a little emotional because it was like I was little, but it was like, I want to make movies. I want to transport people to a new place. So it was really about just telling stories and creating these wonderful fantasies for people. That was my sort of theoretical goal. But then when I got into animation, I realized, oh my God, you can make a movie one frame at a time. You can control every element of what people are seeing, when they're feeling it. It felt like the ultimate in movie making because you really have your finger on every single element that is up on that screen. And so I didn't even know it, but that it was a perfect version of filmmaking for the way that my brain works and the way that I like to tell stories.
Yeah, it's interesting. And some of the people on these podcasts have talked about their careers progressing through the serendipity of this business. And you just mentioned that, in your leaky trailer, and you threw some plastic over a cardboard box and people said, oh, we need you.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people didn't have a defined career path, but a lot of it was about being in the right place at the right time, networking and hard work. Once you'd arrived at Disney, did you have a career plan from there, and and other skills as well as keeping things dry that helped?
I didn't. I feel like when I first got to LA, I did what most young people I think do, is they go, I want to be a director, I want to be a writer, I want to be an actor, or whatever. I never wanted to be an actor, which is I'm probably the only person in Hollywood that's willing to admit that. But I just didn't know what anybody else did. I didn't know those are the famous kind of roles to play. And so I wanted to be a cinematographer for a minute. I was like, again, it was just only the things that you knew about. And once I got, to me, it was really a learning process of going like, okay, wow, this is what this person does. This is what these people do. But for myself, I always seemed to be the person who was like taking care of all the business. Like I was the person who, I often say that like when they needed someone to take notes at the Jeffrey Katzenberg meetings, which happened at 5 a.m. because that guy was so busy, I was like, I'm an early riser, I'll do it. And it wasn't really my job, but I just said, I'll do it. And so again, I was always sort of pinch hitting, putting myself into situations where I was needed. And that's what a producer does. So like in a weird way, even though I was chasing, I want to write, I want to direct, I want to blah, blah, blah. I was like, but I am a producer. Like that's what I do, is I can't help myself. If I see something that needs fixing, I'm going to fix it, or supporting, I'm going to support it, or organizing, I'm going to organize it. Or so it was a weird thing where it took me a minute to go, oh, no, I think I've been producing since I started. And so lean into it. And that's where I think The Nightmare Before Christmas happened. And again, I went up as an artistic coordinator, but I was coordinating every artistic department on the movie, from storyboarding, recording sessions, casting, to armature making, puppet making, and mold making. So like I was like, well, that's what producers do. Like, so on the next movie, I was a producer. So it is a thing where you go, oh, wow, I feel like my career showed me what I was meant to do, and it wasn't necessarily a real goal that I set out to do. So it was funny that the way it all rolled out.
And do you think? I mean, obviously, you know, and I don't mean this in an unkind way, but you sound like a bit of a control freak. You like to be in control of things. And you mentioned earlier on about the great thing about animation is you can be in control of every frame.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit of a control freak. I feel like I do feel like I see the value in planning, and I see the value in being prepared, and I see the value in uh especially, again, this is a weird tangent, but I think being a female and rising in the ranks as a female, you have to always have the answer to every question that could be asked. And so I feel like that was a piece of advice I actually got when I first got to LA from another female kind of executive. And I do feel like it's just the way my brain works. Like I think of all the scenarios and I have solutions for all of them. So whatever comes up, I feel like I'm ready for. That said, I also think that I think it's important to be able to create a space for everyone to be able to do that. And I think I'm not so much of an ego that I can actually allow that to happen. So I think it's control freak with not a huge ego has been my sort of lucky combination.
And it's clearly worked, that's for sure.
I've been pretty lucky. Yeah.
Your work's covering a lot of different animation techniques, and you've been involved in some groundbreaking work, like co-producing the animation for the original Space Jam, which I think was the first time classic hand-drawn animated characters were combined with live-action sequences. Is that right?
Well, it was after Roger Rabbit, so Roger Rabbit did exist, so there was that kind of stuff, and they did put like Tom and Jerry did some stuff in the beginning, but this was really like a feature film, big, certainly sports, and it was the sort of advent of VFX. So we were really, again, sort of pioneering new methods of doing it. So yeah, it was pretty groundbreaking for the time because of the way that we crafted the film. And, again, as I said, I've always been drawn not only to the projects for the creative content, but also I like pushing the envelope of what they can do technologically. So, and I think that's just because my first real job was in the rescuers. And so it was all about figuring out how to craft a system that can paint the cells. And then again, on Nightmare was the first feature length stop motion film, which again, there was very few VFX started to kind of come into play at the end of Nightmare. So the snow that you see at the end of Nightmare was like a VFX, but everything else we had to do by hand. So all the rig removal, the wires, like all making that movie at that time with the technology, it's incredible that we were able to do it, because just watching stop motion go from Nightmare to Frankenweenie, it's just like, it's almost like it's a different medium because of the way that we can use now VFX, and also from Corpse Bride to Frankenweenie, like the technology changed so fast. So yeah, it's those are the attributes that really appeal to me. And then of course Space Jam was just an exciting, it looked like an impossible task. We had to do it in a very short amount of time because Michael had to go back to playing basketball. Like it was just like, there were so many factors that just felt so, the pressure was on. But I would say that it was still like one of the best experiences of my life. I ended up marrying the director of that movie 20 years later, but I met him on that movie. So it is just like, it was a life changer on every level.
That's incredible. I mean, with all these different disciplines and, sort of moving, certainly from the outside, seamlessly between them from 2D to stop motion and hybrids and stuff like that. You mentioned a woman early in your career who gave you some good advice. Were there other mentors in your life who helped you along? So I don't know, when you were moving from 2D to stop frame, was there somebody who helped guide you through the ramifications of stop frame animation?
It's funny. The producer of Nightmare is a woman named Kathleen Gavin, and she was associate producer on Rescuers, and she's just one of the wisest, most wonderful humans on the planet. And she had she was she went from 2D, obviously, on the Disney side to stop motion. And I think being on that journey with her and we both moved up to San Francisco. So we were the only two people who kind of had been in 2D together. I think she was really like a master class in like rolling with the punches. Well, what's the crisis? What is the miracle we have to pull out of our hat today? What is this problem to solve? And really it's all just problem solving. It's just different problems. And again, teaching me and, modeling for me, just learn about what this medium is. And that's one of the reasons I loved my job on Nightmare so much, was because I was over top of all the artistic departments. I was in there making puppets with them, sewing Sally dresses. And I was like, hanging out and having lunch in the armature shop to learn about what makes armatures and what's important to them, and taking that information back to the character designers, because they can't make a ankle for Sally any smaller than this. So come on, we got to design a little set of socks for her shoes because that has to cover the armature. And like finding that if you take the time to learn the crafts of the people that you are leading and helping and supporting, you will do a better job at helping and supporting them. So I think that Kathleen really taught me that. She was a producer who really got to know everybody on her team, and I think I have sort of taken that forward and continued that trend.
Interesting. You were born in New York, or you were raised in New York, weren't you?
Yeah.
And you went to college, and then you went across to LA. And indeed, you spent 10 years in London. What were the creative driving forces that took you from New York from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then all the way across to London?
It was all very much like I think I traveled a lot as a kid. My parents are Italian, so we would go back and forth, and I really did feel like it was not scary to just go places and have adventures and try things. So I think that was I didn't know it, but that was a really helpful attribute of my personality for my career, because when the opportunity to just go, like I figured I always had New York, but let's just go when I'm 22 years old to LA and just give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, I can always come back. And then when Nightmare was done in San Francisco, let's go to San Francisco. Why not? I went to Paris with Disney for a year, and we did a Mickey Mouse short, and we set up the animation studio that they had set up there in the 90s. And I became the person who was willing to pick up and go. And I feel like that added to the adventure. It added to the feeling of being like part of something special and part of being, just part of the team that made the magic. I always dreamed about going to London. We did a little bit of stuff. We did a lot in London, but I got to go to London for a couple of weeks on Space Jam. And that gave, I really got the bug of London being my other heart. My heart lives there. So when the opportunity to go on Corpse Bride happened, it felt like, it was literally a dream come true. Like it was, I had to like listen to the message on my machine like a couple times over when it was like, do you feel like going to London? Tim's got a movie. I was like, did I just manifest this? Did I imagine it? Because it was the location I had always wanted to go to. And then the fact that I turned into 3 movies in pretty much 10 years was, I never planned for it, but it was the greatest experience of my life.
Any sort of different kind of challenges that you came across working, in London that prepared you for your future?
Again, I think it was great to be away from Hollywood, and I think that I really, I think I don't know. I guess it felt like it was wonderful because it was part of the big picture, but it had the autonomy to be a little bit separate. It was great that everybody goes to sleep by 2:00 in the afternoon, or like you don't get bothered until 2:00 in the afternoon when they wake up or whatever it was. There was like nice, you got quiet times where you could actually get stuff done and not have to be on the phone all the time. And so I do feel like just working in London, and then again working with the British people, like especially in animation, where I just feel like there are art colleges and animation is seen as a viable career, and people really hone their creative skills. It was a wonderful experience for me to see what the potential for doing these movies and creating those teams and really creating magic. I mean, Corpse Bride was wonderful, and I'm so proud of that movie and I love it. But then when Fantastic Mr. Fox came along, I thought, it was like same team, but it has to be a vastly different movie. You can't make the same movie because stop motion is very much the fingerprint of the auteur is in every frame. So again, just getting that team to sort of switch gears and creatively switch sensibilities to kind of really capture Wes's vision, and then switch back to Frankenweenie, which was also different because it was black and white, and it was not the same old. Though it had a creative directive that was just creatively very stimulating for the teams. So I think all of that helped me, and I think it helped me do those 3 movies in a row when I ultimately became an executive at Warner Brothers, to be like, I have to be able to carry in my brain multiple movies, multiple visions, multiple teams, and I think even though I did the movies sequentially in the UK, I feel like that section of my life kind of helped tickle my brain into being able to multitask like that.
And wasn't there an apocryphal story about having to shut production down because of an unexploded World War II bomb?
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, that was. I mean, poor Fantastic Mr. Fox. It really got it. It was plagued in many ways by a lot of things, but not the least of which was our first day of shooting. We're excited. We got champagne for everyone to start. And then we got the call that we had to evacuate. There is a bomb in the canal outside of 3 Mill Studios. Like, what? Like, it was literally the first day. Like, so everyone like grabbed their computers and like ran home, but a lot of people didn't have things to do. And like, so again, it was great because we didn't know how long we were going to be shut down for. And everyone just rallied. Like I said, I had people coming and going from my apartment. We had people set up in another person's apartment where they were making things. And it was just, in a weird way, it was a real team builder because everybody had to just go like, well, what can I get done? How do we break down the stuff so that we're ahead of the game? We did not miss a beat. And they ultimately detonated the detonator, and it was hysterical because it was on the news and there was this gigantic explosion. So, but I literally had to call the bond company and go like, so we are getting off to a rocky start. But it's Hitler did it. So it was crazy. And then weirdly, anecdotally, the last day of the mix, the final mix, we went to lunch. We had one more, like half a reel to do, fire at Delaney. So again, people running in and grabbing our stuff and coming out. We had to add another week. So it was pretty crazy that the movie was literally bookended with acts of God. So yeah, but we got it done. The movie's great, and I love it. I love it even more because of those crazy stories. And again, it was a great challenge to rise to, and I did, and my team really did, and we didn't miss a beat.
What led you to make that sort of pretty seismic shift, I guess, from being sort of clearly a very hands-on executive producer on a movie, into the studio system and become a studio executive?
Well, that was also like another sort of serendipitous thing. I was producing a movie called Scoob that my husband was directing, and it was our movie. Like we were making the movie for Warner Brothers, but I had spent so much of my career at Warner Brothers, so I knew everyone. I was close with the executives, and then when Chris DeFaria, who had been my boss on Corpse Bride and Looney Tunes Back in Action, he was the producer on that. He went to DreamWorks. They needed someone to sort of pinch hit. He left. Like he had to, there was no transition time. So I said to Courtney, I'll do it for 6 months. I'll do it for a year until we find somebody to do this. So it never really, she always said I had commitment issues, but I did, I was like, I don't want to be tied down. So I'll do it for a little while. But again, I felt like they needed me. I had been at Warner Brothers since Space Jam and and Iron Giant, and trying to set up a feature animation sort of directive at that studio has been a challenge, because even in Termite Terrace and Bugs Bunny, it was always seen as, oh, that's funny kid stuff, but that's not the real thing. It's not a real movie. And I thought, well, this is my opportunity to kind of really set it up so that they see us as a real movie and they see us as making things that could be super viable. And so I started it a little bit as a pinch hitter, but I ended up actually getting excited about what we could do. And while I was there in my 5 years, we made 10 movies and got 10 movies greenlit at a place where they don't see us as real movies. So it was, I was really proud of what we were able to accomplish. And I love the movies that we made there. And like I said, it helped my brain to be able to talk about more than one movie at a time. It was a different part of your brain. It was frustrating for me personally because sometimes the meeting was just getting good, and then I would get someone pulling me out to take me to a different meeting where I had to dive in, and just as that was getting good, you get pulled out again. So it was hard on one side, but it was also, I thought, very, very satisfying to be able to look at that and going, that's been the most productive era of feature animation at Warner Brothers ever.
And I would imagine working with Katzenberg and having 5 a.m. meetings must have set you up perfectly for that.
I'm an early riser. It has served me well in my life.
When I was at Disney, there was a story about Katzenberg, who actually had moved on by the time I got there. But apparently he used to say to people, if your car's not in the car park by 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, don't bother coming in Sunday.
Yes. But you know what? Yes. And he has a crazy work ethic. God bless him. But I learned so much being at that 5 a.m. meeting and just seeing the way, and he's smart, super smart guy. And you might not like the solution he was giving you, but that guy knew where the problems were, and he was pointing them out very clearly. So I think, again, just being in, I think often of those meetings when I was an executive, when I was trying to be helpful and productive, when I had to step back and go, don't give them the solution, let them find it themselves. But this is where the problem is.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
and I do think that, again, as like weird life advice, I do feel like you never know. Everything is a tool that you will find that you will use later. And like, you never think that, putting a tarp or being up at 5 o'clock in the morning with a can of Diet Coke in your hand at the door, or like all the things that you didn't think were going to serve you ultimately do serve you if you kind of keep your wits about you.
Yeah, it's all about approach and attitude to it, isn't it? If you see it, I've got to get up at 5 o'clock, or probably more earlier than 5 for a meeting, and that's a real pain. But actually, if you see that as an opportunity, you're going to be in there with some very senior people, smart people. You're going to be able to learn a lot, which you wouldn't get at 9 o'clock in the morning because the meeting's over.
Exactly. And it makes me sad a little bit nowadays that there's such and again, I respect the work-life balance, but I feel like some of my favorite experiences and favorite memories of my projects were at 10 o'clock at night when we got pizzas in and we couldn't crack the code. And so I never saw it as an imposition because I always felt appreciated by my senior people. And then also tried to really make the junior people that were on my teams feel like their ideas are just as good as anybody else's. And so it is, I would hate to have lost those times.
This podcast is made possible thanks to the support of the awesome Liberi Consulting. Liberi offers specially tailored industry-related training courses. Check them out at libericonsulting.com. That's LIBERI consulting.com. You can also find links to their fantastic courses on the Festivus website.
It's interesting you're talking about, anybody on the team has a valid idea, and I was thinking about the increasing use of AI these days, and creative people still being the backbone of animation. How involved are you these days with developing new talent and helping the industry adapt to new techniques and technical opportunities? And I differentiate those two deliberately. It's technical change can be seen as either a closing door or maybe an opening door, depending on your attitude towards it. As in 2D versus 3D versus stop frame. And now we've got supposedly self-generating technology. And let's face it, AI is here. It's not going to go away. How do you think we can harness it and retain genuine creativity and prepare new talent coming into the industry for this?
Yeah, I mean, I do think I'm trying to see it as an exciting element. And I do feel like I've been playing around with it. I'm looking at ways where you can use it as a tool, because to me, it is still a tool. Like, even if you look at the way CGI put a lot of like 2D animators, out of business, or like they had to sort of retrain. It's still, if you were a great 2D animator and you retrained, you were a great CG animator. Like, you could train. You need to look at the talents that you can pull forward, and so I think that the more we know about it, the more able you are to navigate it. So I have been trying to kind of dabble in it. I think it's still, right now, it's still derivative. So you're not going to get a new idea there. A funny thing is, this is a weird anecdote, but I've been writing these children's books as gifts for people, and I decided that I wanted to write some songs. And there's an AI for songwriting. Oh, I'm obsessed. I've written like a whole album of songs. They're terrible, but that's exactly what AI is good for. It's good for someone with absolutely no musical talent to write a song that sounds like the Backstreet Boys are singing it. So like, it is it's a tool to help people who aren't good at things do something that they could not otherwise do. If you can do things, then the sky to me is the limit, and you need to be on the forefront of how to maximize those tools. So again, I think people have to really change the way they think more, and if you can do that, if you can jump on that train, I think that it will be a great tool to use. But I do think you have to change the way you think. It's not going to be business as usual. And I think even for the whole industry in general, I think we have to stop looking at the paradigm of movies and television and animation, and specifically, as being business as usual. We have to find a new normal moving forward. And that normal is going to include some use of AI. And the more ahead of it we are, the more control we'll have over it.
I completely agree. I was at the Manchester Animation Festival last year, and there was a panel about AI, and this is 10, 11 months ago now, and group of studio execs and up on the stage, and obviously quite an interested audience. And one guy put his hand up, and clearly he was a sort of what I would call a cold-face animator. He was there, animating day in, day out, and he said, "Should I be worried that AI is going to take my job away from me?" And somebody on the panel said, "No, you should be worried about the person who embraces AI, because that's who's going to take your job away."
Yeah, absolutely. It's not the computers. And again, it's frustrating because it does feel like the headlines are all about AI, and so certainly investors and and studio people are like, yeah, I want that. I want the computer that doesn't cost me anything to do all, So I think that's the problem, is there's a knee jerk to go, oh, it's going to solve all my problems. It's going to make these movies faster and cheaper and blah, blah, blah. But the more you know about it, the more you can inform those people as to the best way of using it. I think that we are the people who need to be the agents of the change, not the people who are just hearing buzzwords and firing thousands of people and hiring, getting render farms, because I think we have to harness it ourselves so that we have that value, that additional kind of knowledge. That's what I'm trying to do.
Interesting.
The good news is it is prompt based. And I do think that in animation, and especially like directors of animation, storyboard, you are used to kind of breaking things down to what you need. And that is how you work with AI, is you've got to be able to really control every little piece of what it's doing. I'm more of a generalist, so I'm not that good at it, but my husband is a director, so he is very good at getting exactly what he wants. It's like, well, when I talk to artists, I get exactly what I want by asking for it. So it is like, it's going to be a different way of thinking about things. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see who embraces it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we were talking earlier about, your credits, and you've been talking about the future, AI and stuff. What's next for you? Have you got projects in the pipeline? Clearly, you're writing children's books as well.
No, please me. Yeah, I mean, I have been very busy these last couple of years, and I do have a couple of projects that I am developing, and again, trying to not just develop the creative part of it, which again, that is where I live and breathe, and that's my happy spot, is kind of like digging into the stories and the characters, but also just going, well, let's embrace this new technology. How is the new technology going to help us? Because everybody wants to make the same movie for less. You can't just use the same process and just make it cheaper because it will look terrible. So how are we going to get technology to help us to do that in a different way? So what are the new pipelines? And so I've been spending a lot of my time like investigating pipelines, looking into different technologies. And then on the other side of it, looking into, I'm working with a number of writers that are like literature writers to find projects that I think will have that pedigree and have that weight and artfulness, because I think that's what you want, is the marriage of the two. I mean, I think in many ways, Iron Giant was another example because the giant was a CG character, and that was really never done to make it look like it was 2D. But again, we had a wonderful Ted Hughes story. We had Brad Bird's brilliant direction and concept. And we were excited and stimulated by a way to push that medium forward. To me, that is, and they also cut our money in half. So it really ticked all the boxes to do that again, something like that again. And again, most of my movies, the average age ends up being like 25 years old because you got to get young people who don't know how it's supposed to be to do new things. And I think so. I do think that it could be an exciting time for kind of young filmmakers.
Well, I was going to ask you, because sort of as we begin to wind up, I had a couple of questions, and I'm going to turn them round. Clearly, you think you would clearly encourage someone to enter the industry right now.
I would encourage people to enter the industry, but I do think you have to enter the industry with a sense of adventure. You have to be a pioneer. You're basically saying, is it worth it crossing into the great frontier? I think you have to see it as a frontier. I don't think it can be like, oh, this is a lucrative business, I'm going to get into it. It's I think we're back to 1980, 88, 89, where you have to go, I have a passion for this. I'm going to be an agent of change. And so to me, that's what makes me excited, because it feels like it's going back to the unknown, which I like. So I think that young people just need to have their eyes open, that you got to be clever, you got to be creative, and you got to be up for what's needed.
And how do you think somebody who is, young, and you're saying they need to be a pioneer and come up with it, how does that not depend a lot on who you're working for? Because clearly you encourage new ideas, enthusiasm, you encourage sort of more junior people on your team to come forward with all this kind of stuff. But not everybody's like that. Not all producers and execs encourage that.
But I think that, and that's an interesting point, because there's ways to do it without just raising your hand and talking in meetings and thinking that your idea is the best idea. It's like, be on time. Come early. Like, you know what? You're going to have a much better chance of getting someone to listen to your ideas if you're there early, if you're there and the coffee's already made, or that you come into the office and you don't only want to work from remotely. Like, I think that there's ways to be seen, because really it's just about being seen. And I think I'm good at seeing people, even if they're not and creating an environment where people can be seen. But I think that there's ways to be seen that are not necessarily like that you can find, and to look into what works for your supervisor, and kind of going, okay, well, this person respects this, and so I can kind of do that, because it is hard. And then again, I also tell people to be innovative. The technology now is such that you can make your own movies, you can do your own thing, you can write your own stories. And I don't know why people don't do it. Like, don't wait for people to give you a chance to follow your dream, especially now. Like, to make a movie when I was starting, you had to have a 16 millimeter camera, get the film, and who's got an editing bay and what have you. And now it just seems like you can do things so much more easily that showcase your vision and your voice. And to me, that gets attention.
Yeah, and I used to do a thing at my daughter's school years ago, and about my pitch was, it was all about sort of different careers, and my pitch was, you want to work in the movies, but you don't want to act. And people used to come up to me and say, well, I want, these are like, I don't know, 14, 15-year-olds. I want to be a film director. What do I do? And I said, well, go and direct something. Yeah. You've got a phone, you've got some editing software. Go tell a story, a 30-minute story. Go and, as you just said, back in the day when I started, you needed access to, as you say, a film camera or something, and be able to splice film together. But nowadays, the opportunities to prove that you've got innovative ideas and things like that are just out there. They're literally in the thing that you carry around with you all day, every day.
Yeah, and just encouraging people to take the initiative. And it can be the initiative to make stories or tell stories, but also to inquire. Like, one of the things I loved, my friend of mine teaches at Brooklyn College, and she does things where she actually has people who don't direct or produce or write movies come and speak to her class, because maybe you're a great costume designer, maybe you're a great VFX supervisor, and it does seem like so many times young people only see those top jobs, and it feels daunting and it feels intimidating and it feels out of reach. And it's like, start making puppets or start doing something like that you go to art school for or whatever. And then slowly you can work up to being a director or a producer or a writer or whatever. So I also like to encourage young people to just do some research onto what it takes to make a movie, because it takes a lot of very talented people.
Yeah, it sure does. And it needs great producers and great leaders like yourself in order to sort of gather those people up and have a vision and a sense of direction.
Yes. So it is fun. It's nice to do these things because it makes you remember why I love what I do and why I want to keep doing it. So
no, good. I'm glad to have helped. So Alison, just as we wind up, I wanted to ask you one final question, which is, over the years, what do you think the best creative or business advice you've ever been given was?
Well, I would say, from my personality, one of the best pieces of advice I was given was from the producer I mentioned, Kathleen Gavin. Yeah, I think that she spotted my control freak tendencies early on. And she once just said to me, Allison, if you're doing it wrong. You need to delegate. If you're going to be a leader, you need to create a space and create the trust so that your team feels empowered and feels able and confident to run with things. And you will be a stronger leader if you kind of empower your team to actually take the initiative on things. So it was hard for me. It was really hard. I will say that. Like, it's always, I hear those words echoing in my head often, where it's like, when I'm doing too much, when I'm taking on too much, when I'm too tight. And I do feel like it has helped me. It has helped me both grow my team and then also keep my sanity. And I think ultimately make a better movie, because, these movies are collaborative. These movies are a team effort, and they are stronger for the team. And some of my most emotional moments watching my movies is when I remember who ran point on that, or whose idea that was, or who the artist who made that beautiful prop or that beautiful puppet or what have you. So I do think that was a great piece of advice, and I definitely think of it often, and I have to remind myself often, because it is not a natural tendency on my part.
We all live and learn, don't we?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Allison, I can't thank you enough for sparing time to chat to me today. It's been absolutely brilliant to catch up. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. This has been really fun for me, and then I just love being part of this series. I feel really honored to be invited. So thank you so much for having me, and let's keep in touch.
There you go, Allison Abbate. What an incredible role model and inspiration to have as a guest, and my gratitude to Allison for making the time to talk to us. My thanks also to Janet Balmforth of Liberi Consulting for her organisational and diplomatic skills, Julian Scott of Film London for his wonderful hosting, and to Odilia Sickinghe for her edit skills and ongoing backroom support. We'll be back soon with more from the FSTVS Podcast Executive Edition. Until then, ha da bra! Information about Film London can be found at filmlondon.org/animation. Well worth a visit. And once again, a huge thank you to Liberi Consulting for all their support in making this podcast series a reality. Check out their industry-related training courses on the FSTVS website now. Thanks everyone, and come back soon for more episodes.